I'm so stoked to have you, man. This is Mark Ackenback from First Defense USA. What is up, my dude?
What's up, man? Glad to be here.
Not as glad as I am. We had a good day today.
Yeah.
You happen to be in town, and this has been on the calendar for a very long time for a weekend of training. Today we did pistols, more specifically defensive pistol.
Yep.
Tomorrow we hit carbine work. What exactly are we doing tomorrow? What does that outline sort of look like?
We'll start with a cold start, kind of similar to what we did today in the pistol class.
Okay.
Kind of get a baseline for everyone, see where everyone's at. And then kind of do the same style workup like we did today. In the beginning, hit a little bit of a fundamental workup, make sure everyone has their fundamentals down. And then the second half of the day, really break down and get into application, right? And really based around more like the home defense side of things. And kind of bringing in a lot of the statistics as far as like engagement distances and stuff like that and how the training can really, pertain to that. So,
that was an interesting part about today. I think it's a little different, some different things about you, just as an instructor that I heard today. We see there are some, like, let's just say from like the social media world, there are pages out there that are very much about going through like officer involved shootings or, kind of what you see on CCTV or things like that. And they're trying to kind of put things together, but who you train and how you train is very much a big part of it is about statistics. So if we're going to train this, like, why are we training it? Like, does it make sense? Where does it fit in? And you were dropping some numbers today where I was like, okay, so that changes my mindset a little bit on quite a few things, just how the percentages or like your probability of this situation and just doing this one little thing can change the percentage dramatically, like by 40%. And I don't want to give all those numbers away. People can, if I start doing that, people are going to like,
Yep.
just like, well, that's not what the FBI says or whatever. So I don't want to get into that. If people want to know that stuff, they can come take your class. But I thought that was very interesting because it definitely gave like whatever we happen to be doing that much more meaning for me. And anybody that listens to the show and has heard me sort of review classes that I've taken or whatever else, they know that stuff like contextually, I think is really important for every user, but particularly for me, I take a lot of things away from that. So, for some instructors out there listening to this, like, yeah, that's cool. I have my curriculum and it kind of follows statistics. I think it's important sometimes that you hear actually what that is, like at the moment you're doing it. So, and I don't want to blow that up too much, but that was a cool part about today. And I'm looking forward to tomorrow. But listen, I've been waiting to get in front of you in this kind of format for a long time, but more on the training side, because I only spent very limited time with you in a couple of environments. Mm-hmm. And so this is a huge opportunity for me. Kyle Manzano Tactical is hosting you up here in Northern California this weekend. We have a good group of people out there, mixed group of people. And so I wanted to sit down and talk to you about a little bit about who you are, because you're a little mysterious to me. I don't know if that sounds weird or not.
Parolee turned firearms instructor.
That's so funny you should say that, because you have a big following, like social media wise.
Not a parolee, by the way.
Yeah, but it's funny. Like you look at Mark, he's got tattoos up to his ears. Yep. And there's like everything's covered in tattoos or whatever. He lifts up his shirt for his concealed, like for this concealed stuff today, and like it's all inked. There's nothing there. So yeah, it's just a little bit of a different vibe. Certainly, definitely different here in California. But I want to shut up about it and just kind of talk about who you are, dude. Like, you're a California dude. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about where you came from, like what, how you got to where you're at. You can start and stop wherever you want. Okay. I'll probably interrupt you to fill in the gaps.
Yeah. Man, where to start? My name's Mark Ackenback. Born and raised in California, Southern California specifically. I am 32 years old. I'm a God-fearing man. I'm engaged to an incredible woman, Lex, and teach full-time, man. Firearms instructing full-time since about 5 years ago or so. Okay. Been doing it about full-time, and been loving every step of it, man. Getting to meet incredible people on and off the range, and super cool, man. Blessed every minute, every second, everything I get to do. I'm really stoked to be able to do it. It's cool.
I'm I'm always interested in people's stories and the characters and kind of how those people got to where they're at. And you said 5 years. I mean, you also said you're 32 years old. So this is not something you've done your whole life. Just letting the cat out back. There's not a military background here, right? There's not a law enforcement background here. Let's talk about the background, because how you wound up here is interesting to me. And I'd love to hear about the details of this.
Yeah, that's a big one. A lot of people, they're like, so you're prior military? I'm like, nope. Oh, prior law enforcement? Nope. Like, never pretended to be something I'm not, and the second somebody asks me, what's your background? I'll typically interrupt them halfway through and to tell them what it was, which was neither of that. I was a welder for 10 years. That's what I did for a decade, And so as far as like background goes, I think it can be important to some extent. But one kind of cool fact when I started getting into this, and it was a lot of people are like, no one's going to take you seriously without like a military law enforcement background.
You hear that all the time?
Yeah. And I've been to a lot of classes, man, a lot. And hopefully nobody takes this the wrong way, but some of the worst shooters in the class come from a military or law enforcement background.
I don't take that the wrong way at all, because I've been in a lot too.
Yeah, not all. There's some phenomenal shooters with that background.
Agreed.
But a lot of people think like, oh, if you're in the military, you're some great shooter. And I'm like, maybe, but just because you're there doesn't mean you were good at or the best at what you did, unfortunately. So background can be important on some things, but here was a really fun fact that somebody told me, because I'm like, it's something I enjoy doing and helping people out. And I feel I have a good understanding of fundamentals and how to, help people with that and help them become better shooters and better protectors. And so one of the big ones, the fun fact was, someone asked me, like, do you know who trains our special forces how to shoot? And I'm like, military? And he's like, no, civilians. I'm like, what? Yeah, the best shooters in the world, competition shooters, civilians. I'm like, no way. So that was kind of like, okay, maybe there's, hope if I wanted to do something with it. But beside all that and like the negativity that a lot of people had, I'm like, you know what? If it goes somewhere, cool. If not, I still just enjoy shooting and helping people out.
Yeah.
And it's more of a passion of mine. And man, it's just crazy to see where it's come in only the short, 5 years, and been able to travel all around the country to teach at really cool big events. My buddy Rick Crawley from Achilles Heel Tactical, great dude, great instructor. And, he has me train at his big events. And like I said this morning with Kyle hosting me, I'm like, it's funny, at the bottom, it's competition. At the top, it's collaboration. I
love that.
It's so true, man. It's like all helping each other out. So yeah, as far as to answer your question, zero military law enforcement background. And to some extent, I feel that puts me at an advantage.
I actually agree with you on that. Yep.
Yeah. And what I mean by that is I'm not stuck to some indoctrinated way of thinking of this is the only way because this is the only way we've ever done it. And that's so common in training these days is, it's, well, what about this way? You shut your mouth and do it this way because that's how we've always done it. And it's like, okay, well, hey man, it's been 20 years since that. And maybe there's a better, more efficient way of doing it. Why would we not want to improve, our ability to protect ourselves? Why put yourself at a disadvantage when you can put yourself at an unfair advantage, right? And when it comes to self-defense and fighting for your life, why would you ever want to put yourself at a disadvantage? And so I kind of can think outside of the box on a lot of those things because I'm not stuck to that indoctrinated way of, thinking. So
who's influenced you along the way?
Oh man, that's a good question. My buddy Nick Vaughn, he first introduced me to firearms. 14 years old, shooting freaking TVs out in the hills with shotguns, right? Shooting water heaters and, just all the trash that people leave out there. And then we started, he introduced me to like the Magpul dynamic videos. Right?
The old Magpul videos.
I think that's kind of like where everybody started.
They were classics, man.
Yeah. So we'd watch them, we get all amped up, go out in the hills and make fools of ourselves trying to, mimic it. And then, he influenced me to buy my first rifle when I turned 18. And then when I turned 21, bought my first handgun. And then thought I was cool. I was going out, shooting, messing around, watching those Magpul videos, thought I had it dialed in, and took my first class when I was 21. And with Active Shooter Defense School in San Diego. Matt Clear owns that. He's a great buddy of mine. We still keep in touch. And he's like my OG mentor with shooting, man. The first class I ever took, realized I knew absolutely nothing. It was so humble humbling, such a humbling experience. But that's what made me fall in love with it. I'm like, man, there's so much to this. And it was just so intriguing to me. And after that, I was freaking at the range, his range, taking classes. And, so that was like, Nick got me into shooting, and then Matt Clear kind of set me on this journey and this path of training and wanting to become a better shooter. So as far as, influences, those are definitely the two. And then I've taken a lot of classes, man. And there's a lot of great instructors and, other influencers along the way. But those two people are really who jump-started me into this. So
it's interesting. Like the next step is like, at some point this becomes a business for you, right? But I was listening to you today, and I've been a fan, sort of a follower for a very long time, just kind of watching who you're training and how you're training them. I got some insight to that today. I want to talk a little bit about that, and just actually how broad and how vast and how deep actually that training goes with different types of people and how you've been connected with people. But again, there's this transition into business, right, of shooting. How does that happen for you? Is it just like, where do you started as a new instructor? Like at some point you're like, well, now I'm giving lessons. Is it start like with like where a lot of people start, like you're coaching your friends, and then it's like they bring their friends and they want to know how much this costs, and all of a sudden you're like, maybe I can make a little money doing this? Or was there somebody you were watching going, there is a real business opportunity here and I am going to do it this way?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So, yeah, man, really just kind of started out as more of just, I don't want to call it a hobby, right? But more of a passion to help people shoot. And then I was like, hey, I want to do this thing. So I got certified as an instructor through the NRA, which if anyone's an instructor knows that means absolutely nothing. It's just so you can get your insurance, right? Like that's,
It's a prereq through insurance.
Yeah, right. And so basically got that, and then started teaching people, like you said, friends, family, and then, just kind of posting stuff on social media, on Instagram. Didn't have much of a following, and people were hitting me up for private lessons, and I started teaching. And then I'm like, hey, I'm going to post a full class, 10 people filled it. And I'm like, man, that was really cool. Everyone had great feedback. And so I'm like, I'm going to keep doing that. And then it got to the point where, I was charging, $100 for a 6 hour, $100 a person, 6 hour fundamental class. And then the more I was teaching, people were telling me like, you need to offer way more, because I've been taking classes for years. This is the best class I've ever been to, I'm like, huh. And then this one person, as a $100 class, they tipped me $250 on top. They're like, you need to charge more. And that happened a few separate times, right? Where I'm like, okay, I think it's maybe time to, yes, right? And so I increased my prices, because I'm like, you know what? I'm not on the same level as these, these superstar instructors, where people are paying big money just to really meet them in general, not really even what they're putting out.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
And so I was like, that's not where I'm at. Like I don't feel fair charging that much, because I don't have as much experience, and, just kind of doubting myself really. But I'm glad I did that. And then just kind of let the audience tell me what I, what I needed. And that's how I gauged my value, And then if you look and compare yourself to other instructors that are out there, like well-known instructors, it's, there's kind of like a balance, of like, yeah, it's going to cost anywhere from this to this. That's pretty average in the market. And somebody's way over that. It's like, all right, dude, like
what's really going on?
Yeah. So yeah, it started out that way. And then obviously, now I teach full time. So in that aspect, it's like, okay, I got to figure it out. And I was spending, when I transitioned to teach full time, I was on the range easily 12 hours every single day. Cause I'm like, I got to grind, dude. I don't have a guaranteed check every week. Like, if I don't show up to work, dude, like I'm not paying my bills.
Right.
And so I was like, I'm going to grind, I'm going to hustle. So I was booking back to back lessons a day, private lessons. And I was booked 3 months out for 5 days a week, 3 months straight. And it was a great thing, but I was getting burnt out, man.
Yep. That's the other end of it. It's like, how sustainable is this? Right.
Correct. So once I got that, I basically was like, all right, I'm charging this much for private lessons. If I double my price and I lose half my clientele, I'm making the same amount, but I'm spending half the amount of time on the range. So that gives me more time, with my fiance, with my friends, my family, and just to live my life, man. And, I don't know how you gauge success. A lot of people have a different view of success, but to me, it's not how big your bank account is. because I've been to a point when I had my full-time job, making six figures, and I was miserable. I hated my life because I'm freaking on the road working 84-hour weeks, gone for months at a time. I'm like, what's the point, man? You can't even enjoy it.
Right.
And you can't take it with you when you're dead. And so I was like, if I make a little less, but I can actually enjoy my life and live, like I'll take that all day long, And so that's, kind of that balance that I've found. And that's kind of where I'm at now, and it's working.
Yeah, I love the story of the grind. Right. And then also recognizing that you can't do that forever. And the whole, like, I'll sleep when I'm dead. Let's just make money, and trading your health for wealth and trading the quality of your life for wealth ultimately catches up with you.
Yeah.
I've personally experienced that. And, right now I feel like I have a really great balance, and I really love that. But I also know it doesn't always stay that way. So you have to stay in front, of that as much as you can. Part of that is understanding what your value is and making sure it's established, and that doesn't go the other direction. Don't put yourself in a position where you look and smell desperate, and don't do anything that is going to compromise your integrity that obviously erodes that value right from the get-go. So those are strong lessons. There's, in this day and age, I think you see a lot of people that just want like instant gratification. They want it, and they want it now, and they don't really understand what you just said. And you said a lot of things, and it covers a long time. You said 5 years that you've been doing this sort of full time, but it covers a long time period or span. And a lot of the people, that I'm looking at from an instructor perspective are somewhere. So the newer people that are trying to make a name for themselves are maybe inside their first 1 to 3 years. Mm-hmm. And that's that's where you have to grind the hardest, but it's also the time where you can get in the most amount of trouble, I feel like. And, with the game with the social media and how you build your clientele and whatever, that's where you stand to make the biggest mistakes that are like irreversible. Or you're going to spend the rest of your career trying to, pardon my language, but unfuck yourself from. So let's talk about, you have not done that, right? You've run a very, very solid business, and you're very highly respected. And so when I look at you, without blowing you up too much, so just take it easy here. I look at you as one of the premier providers here in the state of California. And I know that expands well beyond the state. But when I look at, regionally, how we're kind of set up as a state, and a lot of people I don't think understand how big that is, how vast that is, and how much, like it would actually be easier and cheaper for me to probably fly to like Arizona, right? And train with somebody there than it would be for me to get in a car, drive all the way down to Southern California, do 8 hours of driving or whatever, get a hotel, and then have to drive all the way. But there's a big commitment there where I could get on a plane and I could be in Arizona in an hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes. Yep. And I could be back almost in the same day if I wanted to, which I can't do otherwise. But here's my point. My point is that people here know who you are, and you're starting to, you've really got some outreach out there. There's other people out there in the world, for that matter, which I want to cover, that come to see you. But not everybody knows about you. But if you're in the Southern California area, I would be hard-pressed to know anybody that doesn't know about you, which I think is very interesting, that you can be so, I guess, I don't want to say popular, that's not the word, but known and respected in one area and then completely unknown in other places. But I want to talk about who's training with you, because I think that leads into this. Who are the people that are coming to see you, man? Who are your clients?
Yeah, a lot of different people. We teach people have never touched a firearm before, right? That's more in a private lesson setting. And then we train responsible armed citizens, people getting their CCWs, their concealed carry permits, home defense, all that good stuff. And then we train law enforcement, border patrol. We've had some guys come out from the military as well. And so just a really wide span, but more so cater to law enforcement, and then responsible armed citizens, concealed carry, home defense type things. And like I said, the more the newer shooters is more kind of private lesson setting, So
I think that's so great, because there's a lot of instructors out there that have really just said, no, I'm only going to teach this one group of people.
Yep.
So when I was out on the range today with you, with it was a very diverse group of people, from ability level to background to experience to all that stuff. The experience that I had sort of alluded to before was very, very short, and it was with a bunch of good shooters, like a lot of people that actually make a living with a gun, as instructors when I spent time with you before. So what I noticed today was your ability to connect with everybody on the line. As I mentioned, I think at the beginning of this thing, I've taken a lot of classes, done reviews on people, and that's not always the case that they can sort of connect with everybody. But you're still teaching somebody that's hardly ever handled a gun. Where I think a lot of instructors look at that like, no, I'm beyond that. That is not what I want to do. I need to pack a class with 12 to 15 people that want to be, that all come out wearing multicam and think they have to wear multicam. And you're chuckling, so you get it. Can we talk about that a little bit and like why and how and all that?
Yeah. One thing, bringing back my buddy Nick Vaughn, who helped me get into to shooting. When I was trying to develop my company, I was coming up with like my company name, like tactical, dynamic, this, that, nothing wrong with that. Right. But I'm like, that's what I like. And that's, I'm into high level stuff. And he goes, think about it, man. Like, what do you think majority of your clientele is going to be? How many other people do you know that are invested as much as you are? And I'm like
zero.
Maybe one or two.
Yeah. You
know what I mean? Like in my group. And I'm like, dang, that's a good point, because if I'm only going to cater to those types of people, like it's going to be really small classes on the range, And he's like, think about how many new shooters there are. And then especially with like the whole COVID thing and people freaking out, so many new gun owners. And so I went the route where I'm like, okay. And he kind of put it in a perspective, like brand new gun owner at the gun store, just bought their gun. There's 2 cards for firearms training. One card has a guy in, picture of a guy in full multicam, fully kitted up, dynamic, tactical, whatever. And then another guy that's like, firearm safety, and it's like that new shooter's gonna be like, yeah, that one's probably not where we're at. Let's go for this guy, And so kind of finding that balance of like, hey, we're not doing it like NRA FUD crap, but at the same time, we are offering a very high level of training, but there are different levels to it. And so that's how First Defense got, developed. And I'm glad he helped me with that and kind of gave me a reality check, because otherwise I'd probably be very lonely on the range, only catering to that 1% maybe.
And boring, by the way, if you ask me. Like I think at some level, then you get caught into this silo of training the same thing over and over again, and you think it's good, and some people think it's good, but it perpetuates itself, and it's not actually that. It ends up not being that good because you not have your finger on the pulse of what people need and what they want.
Also fulfilling, right? Rewarding, because with high level shooters, man, like they a lot of them have been there, done that, and it's just small little things that could push them to that next level. But with like a newer shooter or maybe an intermediate shooter, man, there's so many nuggets they're getting throughout the day. They're just like, holy crap, dude, this is insane, Whereas somebody that's been through all the top tier classes, it's like, all right, like that's maybe a different way of explaining it, which for all those people need to understand it's just fundamentals.
Right.
Like there's no magic sauce for today's takeaway. Hopefully everyone's takeaway was fundamentals. It doesn't matter if you're moving, kneeling, right, working cover, shooting behind from under a car.
Right.
Fundamentals, right? So with, having that side of it, it's fun too, because it's just seeing them, just light bulbs going off and that just big smiles, man. Like we still get that in the higher level classes too, but it's almost everybody online in a newer, fundamental class or our core pistol classes where it's like huge takeaways, where it's life-changing for them.
That's such an important thing, from going back to the fulfillment part and like the paycheck part of it, right? Like understanding your value, but also getting value in return.
Oh yeah.
It's the same like on the fitness end of things. I relate a lot of things to the fitness business because that's my background, but I love working with people that are like novice or, been out of it for a long time, or let's just say have never done anything for their health and fitness at any point. And those first like couple of months are life-changing if somebody takes the feedback or takes the lesson or takes the coaching and applies it, and there's consistency to it, and they apply the fundamentals, right? There's not a lot of, there's no tricks to this. Like there really isn't. I mean, there's things you can do and ways you can say it that I feel, you could relate to that as like, maybe it's a little trick.
So wait, a gold barrel in my Glock won't make up for a lack of my fundamental deficiency?
No, weird. Absolutely. That's exactly my point. Like equipment you can't buy, your accuracy. Right. You cannot buy your speed, right? No matter how much you pay or who you pay, you can't buy that. You literally have to earn it. You have to work through it. It's the same with your fitness or your health or, your resiliency and any of those things, which is one of the really intriguing things about the firearms industry right now, because there is that like, oh, if I just get the new optic, or I get the new slide, or I get the new stipple job, or whatever else, it's going to make up for all these fundamental points that I lack, which obviously isn't the case. But I think what's smart about what you're doing, take this for what it's worth, but it also keeps the funnels freshly stocked, right? With people, is you're putting in new people into the thing, and you're showing them that these are the fundamentals, and if you can really master them, then there's some sexy shit over here that you might be able to do. But maybe that's not the right way of putting it. Maybe when I'm looking at the sexy shit, what I'm really looking at is the real practical shit.
Right.
Like ultimately your ability to be able to defend yourself and do it in a way that may look sexy, like you see somebody doing out there in the range, or an instructor do, or in a movie, or whatever the hell. That all relates back to fundamentals. And if you can teach them really well to do that, then you can actually progress them into the next thing, versus just telling them something and letting them go on their way.
Right.
So like fundamentals every time. So when we look at like what you're teaching, so you just kind of talked about that. So there's law enforcement, right? And then there's civilians, the responsible gun owner. We talked, and then we also talked about like the newbie who's doesn't even know how to be responsible yet, right? They just bought their first firearm or whatever. Can you talk about sort of how you've organized your business beyond that, like maybe from like a class perspective? And this is the reason I'm asking this, because I see instructors out there that have like a list of like 20 things that they offer, like 20 classes, right? Or more, versus like a very basic menu, or offering like the in and out type menu,
Yep.
It's like, this is what we do. And there's always a nuance, and there are always things in between, depending on who you're working with and who you're standing in front of. But from an instructor perspective, from a business owner's perspective, can you talk about how you kind of organize that?
Yeah.
Like for like a curriculum that people can like, I know if I invest my time and my money into Mark, this is the pathway for me.
Right. Yeah, man. So it starts at the fundamental pistol class, or fundamental carbine, right? So that class is catered to newer shooters, as well as it's not rare to have a uniformed police officer in that fundamental pistol class, and somebody, it's their first class they've ever taken, or maybe their first time shooting a gun, and both of them walk away with a tremendous amount of takeaways and feedback, and both being better shooters and enhancing their skill set, which is really cool. Even though they're both in the same class.
I love that you said that.
Huge different skill sets.
Yeah.
So in the fundamental class, just a quick run through, right? Kind of a crash course of what we do. It literally starts at basic weapons manipulation. How to lock the slide to the rear, how to send the slide forward, how to insert the mag properly. And from there, we're talking about physics and point A to point B and workspace. So everything you learn in my fundamental pistol class, if you take my more advanced level class, which I'll talk about here in a second, you'll be like, oh, all of this is from the fundamental class. I'm like, because there's no magic to it, right? It's just putting in the work and being more efficient at it, but it's really all the same steps, It's just not being, you're consciously thinking about all the steps, right? And then the other one is it's subconscious, it's just happening. And how do we get to that point? Practice, right? So the fundamental class is great. We start there at the basic level. We don't spend a lot of time there. We just get, half dozen load, unload, get everyone safe and comfortable. But believe it or not, that's where a lot of mistakes happen. Even today in class, I saw a lot of guys working on their pistols with their muzzle pointed at the ground and their head and their eyes looking at the ground. I'm like, bro, like we learned that in our first day pistol class, like gun up so you can maintain line of sight and situational awareness of your environment, not head down staring at your feet. You know what I mean? And so if you do need to look at the gun, it's just a glance versus your whole head looking down. That's huge, man. Vision is huge.
Yeah, these things make a big difference as you progress from one thing to the next.
And so it's that foundation, man. It's building that solid foundation. And if you have a bad, just like anything, man, fitness, working out, any sport, if you have a bad foundation, anything you build on top of that, it's just going to crumble apart. And so for the people that attend the fundamental class with like either they're experienced, they're seasoned gun owners, law enforcement, military, we really strip away a lot of the bad stuff and kind of rebuild. And so basically we start there, then we just get into basic marksmanship, understanding trigger control, how to build proper grip, how to get out of the holster efficiently, more importantly, how to reholster safely. It's the most dangerous thing you can do on the range. It's where most people screw up. And then we get into adding a little bit of speed to it, right? Introducing that speed component. of, hey, if it takes you 10 seconds to get the gun out of the holster and your grip built and your sights aligned and a shot on target and you're 9 feet from the target, that's not very realistic, right? So even at a very basic skill set, we still bring in that component of the self-defense side of like, hey, look, guys, these are some things that you should be practicing and, set it out as a goal. I don't expect you to be there today, but understand why it's so important to continue to work to get to that point. So you actually have a fighting chance, right? And then we get into recoil management, we get into reloads and malfunction clearing. And that pretty much wraps up the fundamental pistol class. So it's really just a solid foundation for somebody to take, continue to practice, and that's going to be their foundation. Everything can be built on top of that.
I talked to a lot of instructors on this show, and nobody's ever actually outlined exactly how they do and what they do in their classes. And I think there's probably a lot of people that listen to this show that have taken some type of fundamentals class and never had it presented to them that way. Like, okay, I feel like I did that. Oh yeah. We've done reloads. Oh yeah, no. We've done malfunctions. Oh no. We've done, I've heard this term workspace, and no, I get all that. Here's the thing though, you just mentioned, like, we had it out there on the range today, and all of those guys had been through, everybody, including myself, has been through some type of fundamentals class, yet everybody has a different perspective of what those fundamentals are. Right. And those are the deciding factors with regard to your speed, your accuracy at the end of the day, and what you're actually able to get accomplished out there. So that was actually, as elementary as that may sound for people listening to the show, yeah, dude, I get it. When does it get to the exciting stuff? Doesn't matter which class I think you're going to talk about now. I feel like we're going to be talking about all of that stuff again.
So one thing that I did leave out is in the fundamental class in my intro, I explained to people, hey, we're going to start crawl, walk, and then we're going to sprint in this class. Even if this is your first time shooting a gun, because it's fundamentals geared towards self-defense and fighting with the gun, not fundamentals geared towards putting holes in paper. So I push people, I tell them, hey, in the recoil management side, if somebody runs at you with a blade or any weapon, deadly weapon, to induce harm to you, how fast would you be pressing that trigger as they're running toward you, knowing the more you delay and the more you hesitate, they're closing distance to stab you in the neck? And everyone's answer is, oh, as fast as I can. I go, cool. Well, then everything we've done today is not as fast as we can. So you need to push that limit. Here's the standard. It's quarter-second splits or faster. You need to push yourself to meet that standard. We will never lower the standard to meet your comfort level because you're never going to learn that way. I'm like, you may not see your sights. I don't care. I'd rather have you experience it here, right, in a controlled environment versus experiencing it when you're actually fighting for your life and making a detrimental mistake there that could cost you your life or your family's life. And so it's like, it's a fundamental class, but we do push and expose them to that, to they're like, damn, okay, like, I got some work to do,
Again, that just opens up the whole, like, how much more work is there for me to do, Mark, and what should I come to next?
Right.
What are the next steps for me? Like, what do I do when I leave here? Because I can't come to the range 5 days a week and all that stuff.
So that's the fundamental class. And then what happens is we get a lot of repeats in that class. But they're good. They're decent shooters. And they're sitting there. I feel so bad because they're sitting there for the first, hour and a half, 2 hours of like just getting through all the safety, loading, unloading. And they're going through, they know what they signed up for. So I can't feel too bad, right? But at the same time, they're there just for the shooting component. And I saw that so often. I'm like, man. And then the next level class is more of the dynamic or defensive pistol classes where, hey, now we're applying everything and, on speed and movement and this and that. And so these guys are taking that class and they're feeling like they're kind of outrunning their headlights, so to speak.
Okay.
Right? Like they're like, okay, this is cool. I'm doing all the movement. I'm leaning or shooting from around cover, moving and shooting and doing all, like you said, like the sexy stuff.
Cool guy stuff. Yeah.
But they're not able to get accountable hits. And like, it doesn't matter how fast you can miss the target, bro. It doesn't matter if you're
miss faster.
yeah. If you're behind a vehicle and in full kit, if you can't hit the target, nothing matters. And so what I developed after the fundamental class was a core pistol class. And so this class is kind of to bridge the gap from the fundamental class to the more advanced movement and stuff like that. We introduce movement at the very end of the class and a little bit of use of cover. But it's really focusing on, now we're introducing time standards that have to be met, like first round out of the holster on target, really pushing recoil management at various distances, establishing baselines for shooters, understanding, hey, target size, target distance determines how fast, how accurate, and giving them that baseline so they know where they're accountable at various distances, especially off the range, right? More importantly. because every bullet that leaves that gun has your name attached to it, as well as a lawsuit, especially here in California, bro. They protect criminals, okay?
Yeah, they're not. Yeah.
And then there's time standards to be met on reloads, right? We cover malfunction clearing. And so it kind of bridges that gap. And it's been such a great class, the core pistol, and we do a core carbine class that bridges that gap where it's like, the fundamental, hey man, it's cool, but I just want the shooting part. And then the more advanced stuff, I'm not quite there yet. I really want to focus on my fundamentals. So that core pistol class bridges the gap, and we've had great success with it, man. It's been selling out, and people have been really excited about it.
Yeah, the thing that I really like about how you handled some of that subject matter today, because I realized we were doing sort of a condensed version of a couple of different things that you're offering based on how this whole thing worked out, was the accountability to some of those things, particularly accuracy, which I think is extraordinarily important. We're not just shooting, at a piece of cardboard all day. It's like, here's where you're shooting, here's exactly where it needs to be, and here's the times that it needs to be in, because it changes everything. Now, no, like in real life, you're not running around with a stopwatch or a shot timer, right? And a black, circle on an IPSC target or whatever else. But what it does do is it makes a person focus, and you have to answer for what it is that you did or you didn't do versus just hitting a piece of paper. We hit steel today too. That's not my point.
Right.
My point is the accountability to what we're doing, and then the accountability to diagnosing your problem or your challenge and figuring it out.
Right.
Because so many times you can get into these, again, now we're running around vehicles and barricades and shit like that when we still are having a tough time hitting the target, or we don't know why we hit it in a certain place or we didn't hit it in a certain place. It just moves too fast.
Right.
Or it's just too accelerated. It's just too accelerated for whoever the person is that's in the class. So, my point is like, I think it's important to outrun your headlights. But it's also important to know what happens. Like, how do you know when you outrun your headlights, and how do you dial it back?
So, in my opinion, with training, if you go to a class and all you do is shoot drills, you're not training.
I agree.
And the instructor is stealing money from you. Okay, and so that's why I put in so much time for diagnosing. But not only my ability to diagnose what the shooter did wrong, but their ability to diagnose. We're going to make mistakes, bro. We're human beings. But the best thing we can do is learn from them and try not to repeat them. But if you don't know what you're doing wrong and the instructor doesn't know what you're doing wrong, how the hell are you ever going to fix that problem? And now we're wasting our time. We're wasting our ammo, our money, which I think ammo is probably more valuable than money right now, And so for me, that's why it's such an important component to my training is like, I'm not trying to steal from people, dude. I'm trying to give them the most value possible. And by doing that is when they step off this range and they go home to their home ranges and continue to train, when they make those mistakes, because it's going to happen, instead of getting pissed off and frustrated or trying to watch a YouTube video on why they did it, they now have that knowledge and that knowledge-based understanding that I was able to provide them, so they can go back through and go through their checklist and be like, that's where I messed up. Cool. So just fix, just like today. Hey man, why'd you miss? Oh, I didn't prep out my trigger and get to the wall. So you missed from improper trigger manipulation. Yes. So how can you fix that on this very next shot? Well, then just get to the wall of the trigger.
Right.
Hey, you missed because of bad sight alignment, right? You didn't see your sight. So how can you fix and remediate that on this very next rep? Align your sights. Cool. There's your answer. There's no magic to it. And so I feel that people really appreciate that because, I'm not going to be in their ear every time they're on the range. That would cost a lot of money. You know what I mean? To have me there every time.
It's not realistic. Yeah.
It's kind of like, the analogy of like, if you, give a man a fish versus teaching him how to fish. It's the same concept there, man. So that's where I'm at on that.
So, that was a really great way of describing that. And I think there's a lot of instructors out there that really appreciate that. Right. Yeah. And then I think there's a lot of students out there that are going to be very impatient with that because they want to do cool guy shit. Right. And there's equipment to be messed around with. And we have to throw nods on, man, and lasers and shit on our guns. Because if we're not doing that, it's boring.
Right. Exactly.
Right? There's all that kind of stuff too. But yeah, I guess just looking at the sort of the bigger picture is, I think that's why people are coming back to you. And I think that's why people come to you from a lot of different places, because to come see you, why you're traveling, why guys like Rick have you out there at different different events and whatnot, and why people want to be exposed to you, because they're recognizing that what you're doing is not necessarily like the sexiest shit out there. It's fucking effective though. Very effective. And again, like I don't I mean, maybe that's not putting it the right way in terms of it not being sexy. I just don't look at shooting as being sexy anymore. Like that's just how I view it. Like when I look fast shooting videos or whatever, they don't impress me. Like, cause I know how that gets done. And I honestly feel like if I put the same amount of time into it and I went out and I practiced the fundamentals, right? Regardless of equipment or whatever else, I could probably be real close. I'm not saying I could be better, just saying I could probably be real close to that fast too. So those things I scroll right past them or whatever, unless there's some value that comes along with that
Right.
fast shooting video from an explanation perspective or what we're doing or why we're doing it differently. I just push past it. I guess my point of this is there's a lot of people coming in to see you from different areas of the country, of the world.
Yeah.
So the real question, I guess the question that comes up with this is like, dude, how much are you actually teaching and where are you doing this? Because I was a little stunned to find, I sort of preloaded this question earlier today. I was stunned to find that out. I knew you were teaching a lot, but I had no idea how busy you actually are. Let's talk about your schedule. Like, what do you do? When's the last time you slept in your own bed, by the way?
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely that balance, you know. So I offer private lessons 5 days a week, but I only do one lesson a day. So instead of back to back to back, I'm only on the range maybe 2.5 to 4 hours a day. And then I have the rest of the day to spend with my family, you know, doing, you know, living my life. So finding that balance there. And then I offer my open enrollment classes during the weekends. And if my local range is booked, then I will book out outside ranges local to me to run like specialty classes, like my low light classes and stuff like that. Cause I just don't, my local range I use closes at 6 p.m. So all my, you know, other classes can be, you know, filled outside of that. That's like my normal schedule. And then I teach at California Tactical Academy for the security company. They hired me to do like a 4-day live fire training portion. It's an executive protection company, and they have a bunch of military guys that come in. They house them. It's like an 8-week program. Super cool. Provide guns, ammo, the whole thing. And I do that 4 days every month, and usually stay out there. So that keeps me pretty busy. And then all the events. We were just in Pennsylvania doing a RXRD with Rick from Achilles Heel. Great event. Great sponsors there. Safariland was there. It was pretty cool. Weather was a little iffy, you know, and but that was great. And then we'll be in Ohio in September. We'll be teaching at Ohio Range Day as well, which is probably one of the biggest shooting events, you know, of the year. It's super cool. People come from all around to attend it, and I'm super humbled and blessed that this will be my second year teaching there. So super cool. So yeah, pretty busy, man. The only time I really get a day off is if maybe a client has to reschedule. I'm like, sweet, got a day off, you know. But sometimes I will, like if I have a really busy week, like teaching this whole week coming up to here, driving 7 hours to get here, got in last night, teaching this whole weekend, tomorrow right after class, jetting to Santa Clarita, and then teaching 4 days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Friday, I have a private lesson. Saturday's my only day off. And then Sunday, core pistol class. And then that whole week is booked after that. So it's like, when I have weeks like that, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go in my calendar and block a day out. Just one day during the week. Just give me my time to, you know, decompress and spend time with my loved ones and catch up on emails, right? Little things like that.
Yeah, and bury yourself from the things that happen. I mean, you're running a business here, right? There's things. Plus, you mentioned family a lot of times. I think it's really important. Again, you've been doing this long enough now to where that is the schedule where there's a lot of people that are doing this sort of on the side,
right?
Like as a side gig. And they haven't quite figured out how they're going to make it full-time. They think they want to make it full-time, and you just did a really good job of describing what that actually looks like. So are you sure, bro? Like, Are you sure this is what you want? Because if you want to do that, then this is what this is actually what the job is. And you know, other people have things figured out differently. You know, they're teaching several classes per week versus the privates and stuff like that. But
just to touch a little bit more on that, I didn't quit my full-time job and then start a training company. I had my training company going for a solid 2 years before I decided to jump ship.
This is a double grind. Grind.
And stippling. I was doing stippling full-time too.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And EMT school and like all kinds of stuff, man. But so yeah, I mean, I get hit up at least once a week by people, hey man, I want to be an instructor. And my mind, I'm like, that's great. You want to help people. But number one, why are you doing it? What's your sole purpose, right? Is it, you know, are you actually doing it for the right reasons? But whenever I see that, just me being judgmental right off the gate, I'm like, yeah, bro, you and everyone else. Like, it's so flooded, man. And that's cool, man. It's a cool market. You know, there's, if you're in it for the right reasons, but there's a lot of bad training out there too, unfortunately, right? They take that NRA certification and they think, oh, I'll just teach everything I just learned. Bro, if you do that, you're going to be getting people killed, like, unfortunately, you know, like, so anyways, just to kind of like a disclaimer on that just starting a training company, like from scratch and doing that full time, like that would be, for me, it would have been impossible, right? It would have been very difficult to do. So yeah, the grind is real, man.
I think that's an important lesson and thing for people to hear out there, that because the barrier of entry to get into it is so low. I mean, you just mentioned like the NRA instructor, insurance, you get the NRA certification, then you get the insurance, and then, oh man, you're automatically an instructor. Start an Instagram page. Like you're a legit instructor, right? Right. So
a lot more to it than that.
A little bit. So let's talk about your why. I mean, let's talk about, why you got into this. I mean, we talked about how you got into it, but let's talk about the why. What's driving you to continue to do this, man? I mean, there's a paycheck involved, right? It affords you a lifestyle. You just mentioned, this is how you schedule your time, you're away a lot, but you also, on those days that you teach private lessons, you teach 2.5 hours a day, which, to a lot of people would sound really great. They don't understand what happens before and after those lessons, but yeah, that's neither here nor there, but let's talk about the why, man.
So a couple different things, different driving factors. First and foremost, the position to be able to help someone on a daily basis. It's such a fulfilling thing. And because a lot of people, when I was getting into it, of course, there's going to be naysayers, like even to this day, how's your little gun thing going? It's always funny. People always have to throw the little in there, right?
Yeah, like what's your real job?
Yeah. And then like
your little gun.
Yeah. You're still doing that little gun thing
that
you're doing? Yeah. And it's just so funny. It's so belittling, and it's like, I don't care, dude. I'm not trying to impress you, bro. And so it's the passion, and it's just a feeling. And what I mean by like helping someone, whether that's holding the door open for someone, small gestures, or, helping someone on the side of the road change a tire. It feels good to help people. And so a lot of people are like, oh, it's just a hobby. You're going to get over it, And I'm like, I'm never going to lose that feeling, because every time I get to train people, I get that feeling of fulfillment of helping somebody, right? And then giving them a skill set that could hopefully they never have to use it. But if they do, hopefully potentially help themselves or their loved ones, especially in today's world. So that's my number one, I would say, first and foremost driving factor, is the ability to be able to help. And it's kind of weird, man. Like on a daily basis, I'll pray and like ask God to like allow him to use me in a way to like anything. Let me help someone today, So like if I see someone, like I'll make the effort to like, oh, I'm going to turn around and like go help that person. And it's funny because like when that happens, I'll get home and like Lex, my fiance, I won't even tell her about it, right? It's just like, nobody needs to know, but it's just that fulfilling moment, man. I love that. And I get that every single time I step onto the range. So it's addicting. Like 5 years in doing it, 7 days a week. And every single day I'm still excited to step on the range, because I'm like, this is rad. I look forward to it. I never dread it, man, ever. And the second I start feeling like we talked at dinner, right, about having to sleep in the airport in Pennsylvania because my flight got delayed.
So annoying.
And the second I started to be like just negative, like, oh, this sucks, and getting pissed. Everyone's all pissed. I'm like, the fact that I'm traveling across the country right now to do what I absolutely love to do, like that, I have nothing to complain about, bro. Right? Like first world problems, right?
Right.
So that's my number one driving factor. Number two, what really wanted me to help people was at the active shooter defense school in San Diego. I had gotten to the point where I was like alumni there. I was taking classes all the time. The instructor and he would kind of help me like, hey man, can you like, sideline coach for me here and there? And there were a couple of law enforcement officers on the range. And when I start talking about this, I work very closely with law enforcement. This is not bashing them by any means. I work closely with Project Blue Lion with Howitzer Clothing. Remind me to talk about that.
We absolutely very talk about Blue Lion.
Very important. But anyways, these cops that were on the range, number one, the fact they're there is amazing. But they were some of the worst shooters on the line. And I, like in the beginning, I'm like, oh, I get to shoot with cops today? Like, hell yeah, let's go, And
this is like one of your first experiences.
Yes, this was very.
I had very similar experience.
Very early on, and I was like, man, like these guys, like all these civilians are like out shooting these cops. And I asked Matt, the owner of the company, like during lunch, I'm like, hey man, like what's up with this? And he's like, oh yeah, that's
typical.
That's normal, unfortunately. But again, the fact that they're there, it like is amazing.
I say the same thing. Like it's their time, or generally their dime as well. Yeah.
Right. And so seeing that, and I'm like, man, like this is who we call when we need help. I'd rather call one of these freaking civilians because they're better shooters. Granted, they don't have all the other training that, law enforcement have. They just can run the gun.
But when it comes to the shooting.
Correct.
Right.
And so, anyways, I saw that. I'm like, man, like that's crazy. If the law enforcement officer is not good at their job, like they may not make it home to their families, like that's kind of eye-opening to me. And so I asked him, like, why is that? And he's like, well, because they don't really get training. They shoot, qual quarterly. They only shoot 4 times a year. And that's not training. That's like being like, bro, I'm trying to get a 6-pack abs, but I'm only going to go to the gym 4 times a year.
Yeah.
That's 4 days out of 365 days that you're going to work out. Like you're not going to see any results. If anything, you'll go backwards. So how the hell are you going to shoot once every freaking quarter and expect
to be better?
Not only sustain your skill, but to get better off of that. Like that's so unrealistic, man. And but a lot of them think like, well, if I can pass the qual, that's good enough, And I'm like, unfortunately, it's not. And there's some phenomenal freaking law enforcement officers that are great shooters, bro. But they're the ones that are out shooting competition, seeking outside training because they understand that hey, that qualification is kind of just a basic level of performance. So the department doesn't get sued, man. Check the box, get them through. But unfortunately, good enough doesn't get you home. And so I'm really glad that, they're starting to see that, hey, they're realizing that. And we'll talk with Blue Lion. That puts me in a position to be able to help them with that. So driving factors, right? Back kind of went down a little rabbit hole there. Right. But bringing it back, I got to the position with constantly training that I was like next to people on the line and they were like struggling, like low and left. Right. It's the biggest thing. Low and left. Your barrel's not bent, bro. Right. And I'm like, hey, like try
barrel's
this.
Not bent.
I'm like, hey, try this real quick. And I'm like in their ear, like I'm not an instructor. I'm a student there as well. And they try it and they're like, holy crap, dude. Like, that's crazy. I'm dead center. How did you know how to do that? And just like that feeling of helping them, I'm like, huh, that was really simple. And like, in my mind, I'm like, how did you not know how to do that?
And you just changed their life. Yeah.
And so it just kind of started from there, man. And then just kept training more and more and more and building my confidence in, my shooting ability. And then also the ability to, assess other shooters and diagnose too. And so it just kind of.
Those reps, from reps.
Man. Yeah. And it just kind of stemmed from there, and then got into a position with, training law enforcement and stuff like that. And now I'm in a position, because believe it or not, a lot of people are like, man, why didn't you ever like join the military or law enforcement or something? Well, believe it or not, my tattoos do not allow me to do that. Because there was a time and place. I got very heavy. I grew up in the hardcore scene, right? Like, so American traditional tattoos is like a common thing. If you don't have them, you're a freaking weirdo, Okay. And so anyways, like I was into this since I was 14 years old. I've been straight edge, and we can talk about that later too. But basically, I've done all of this, most of it, and then before I got into shooting. And so I had talked to a lot of departments, even like military, and they're like, nah, bro, not with the hands, the neck, the head, sorry. And so I was like, you know what? I don't regret any of my tattoos. I love every single one of them. Not every tattoo has to have meaning, but damn near all of mine have meaning to me. God, family, straight edge, man. That's what all my tattoos are. And so anyways, with that being said, I'm like, you know what? Maybe like God has me in a position, like this is where I need to be. Because if I'm a law enforcement officer, I may be able to help an individual person, right? Whatever it may be, which is amazing. But by me being in one area and having multiple people come to me, I'm able to give them that knowledge and then push them out, and then they can maybe share it with their, their coworkers or family members. And so I'm like, you know what? I got to the point where I'm like, I'm done trying to think about doing law enforcement. I think I'm right where I need to be. And now 5 years later, I know that's definitely a true statement, So I'm glad that I kind of didn't give up on wanting to be cop, but for a while, man, that's where I was. And then I just came to that realization. And I'm like, I think I'm right where I need to be. So.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. So like law enforcement was never a thing when you were very young, like really young?
Yeah. I mean, I've never been like anti-cop or anything, but it was just never, I mean, being a welder and, off-road, riding BMX,
Okay.
surfing, like going to the desert, like it was just I never really considered it, until I kind of got into shooting. And I'm like, man, this is pretty cool, and then I considered it, but I had already gotten heavily tattooed.
Gotcha.
So I'm like, well, that's kind of off the table.
That's interesting. Do you feel like that's limited you anywhere else? Like just even in your instruction?
No. A lot of people ask me like as far as having the tattoos.
Yeah. Like, does that keep clients away? Does it keep you from getting contracts? Does it, any of that stuff?
I'm not going to lie. I've had meetings with some lieutenants and stuff like that at departments, and I'm in there, and like I'll be presentable, and I feel I don't dress like a freaking, Well, you see how we went to dinner night.
Yeah. Like, we were joking about that earlier,
yeah.
So I get you.
I wear my pants where they're supposed to be, and, but short answer, no, I've never felt like any flack from that, or pushback. However, though, first impressions, I've had people that have become really good friends of mine, like years later be like, hey bro, like I owe you an apology. I'm like, what'd you do? And they're like, I used to think you were someone completely different, man. My buddy Matt Bates, he owns BGW Gunworks in Idaho, gunsmithing. He built my bolt action rifle for me, did a great job. But he was one of them. He's like, dude, I thought you were someone completely different. And he's like, now that I got to know you, like I would have never thought, And
yeah, I found that interesting, especially, well, here in California, I don't know, for a long time, I just felt like people are a little bit more open to that stuff because that's just what you see. I mean, you're growing up in an area, particularly like in Southern California, you're hanging out at the beach. Like these are not uncommon. However, the reality of it is a lot of times it does follow certain like groups of people.
Correct.
And if you're in law enforcement, a lot of times you're dealing with those groups of people in not so great situations. So I do understand that. I wonder if that ever affects you when you go in and train those guys. Like, do they question?
Here's the big thing though. Not all tattoos are the same.
Oh, absolutely not.
At all.
No, and so, people that understand that, but not everybody does.
And so like American traditional work, you know what I mean? There's nothing negative, nothing offensive. I don't have any gang-related tattoos. There's so for the most part, like if they look at my stuff, they're like, yeah, bro, like that's professionally done tattoo art. You know what I mean? I didn't get it in prison. It's not like nothing against it, but not like skulls and flames and demons and nothing wrong with that. If that's what you're into.
That's what you're into.
But like for me, like I said, a lot of it's meaningful stuff. So I think right out of the gate, number one, if you actually take a look and see the artwork that I have, you'll realize like, oh, that's like professionally done work from like, recognized artists.
Yeah.
Also, that's one factor. How do you carry yourself too? Right? That's huge, man. What's funny is I'm like, when it comes to tattoos, I'm like the most judgmental person because I'll see some dude walking in with like all black and gray work. So I automatically think like, oh, like prison. You know what I mean? Like, and
how the tables turn.
But like, freaking wearing pants halfway off their freaking,
I get it, man.
And just like,
that's called situational awareness, bro.
Correct. Now, here's the thing. Profiling? Oh, I do it all the time, bro. And if you fit that category, I put you in that category until proven otherwise. But that's the key. I will give you the opportunity to prove otherwise. I'm not going to treat you any different. Okay. But I'm going to have some reservations. You know what I mean? Of like, all right, you fit this category. I put you there because I'm not going to let you close to me or my loved ones until you can prove otherwise.
Fair enough.
But if that's how you carry yourself and present yourself, like, bro, I have a wall up, And so when I see guys, that kind of wear, you kind of can figure out the stereotype I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
I see that and I'm like, look at this freaking piece of trash, right? And then me sitting here covered in, and they're probably the nicest person you'll ever meet. Could be. But
so you get it. You understand what it's like on the, from the outside looking in or whatever. But it's interesting you said like you've never felt like it's hindered you, but that's maybe more of the balance of what you bring to the table. I don't want to make it all about tattoos because when I listen to you talk, I mean, the compliment I gave, what I was meaning to give you at the end of the day, I'm not sure it came off like this, was just the pride that I hear you take in how you present yourself, right? There is a very, very specific presentation that you bring to the table, how you articulate things, how you stay organized, how you've organized your class, that touching in with each people's, each of the participants' needs and things like that, which if you don't get like the opportunity to spend the time in there, that stuff can get lost.
Right.
But going back to the presentation piece, like, all right, so if you understand you might have to overcome a few things, like right from the get-go, then you got to work on overcoming those things.
Yep.
So by making yourself presentable and doing those things, it's just, I don't know.
It's kind of to me early on, it was kind of a challenge. Like a challenge would be like when I was younger, like 16, 18, like getting girlfriends and meeting their dads.
Oh, I'm sure.
That was always,
I'm a dad.
But it was something that I took as a challenge of like, I'm going to make your dad really like me.
Yeah.
And even like having
I have some things to say about this shit, dude.
Right. But it was just a weird like thing because I already know, like with my tattoos, well, not at 16, but at 18, like, a lot of tattoos and then like bringing me home, like, oh, what the hell? Get this freaking guy out of my house. But that was always like a challenge of give me 2 minutes to talk with you. And I promise you'll look through my tattoos. Right. And so there was always kind of a challenge. And I think now being an adult, like, dude, what's the funniest thing? I don't even realize I have tattoos. It's the weirdest thing until I see a picture of myself. I'm like, damn, dude,
you got a lot of tattoos.
Maybe I went a little overboard, but I honestly, because they're there every day. I just look past them. So when I have conversations with people, I don't see myself as this, heavily tattooed person. I just see myself as someone that's wanting to interact with someone and help you,
So let's talk about this a little bit deeper, actually, from like a cultural perspective. When we look at things, maybe from the outside looking in. So let's strip away the tattoos for a sec. Let's talk about young men, right? You talked about like showing up to, the young lady's house or whatever and having to meet dad or whatever, and young men today and guys that you may be training and the interactions that you're having with people out there and trying to make a connection with them about what they're doing and why they're doing it. I have so I just, disclosed, like I have daughters, right? And, the one's a little older now. She's a grown adult. She makes her own decisions, does her own thing. But occasionally, if she's dating somebody for long enough, she'll bring him by the house, right? And she sets him up. Like, I'm just going to tell you, like, this is who my dad is, right? So you're going to look him in the eye. You're going to shake his hand. You are going to, he doesn't want to be called Mr. Howell, but understand that, you need to pay him respect in a certain way. I don't tell her this stuff. This is just how she was brought up and what she knows. I just wonder, like with your experience like that, with what you just said and what you have coming to your classes now with grown men that maybe never had that kind of influence or that kind of, I don't know, maybe even social pressure to have to show respect or be respectful. Is that a weird thing for you to have to maybe try and make a connection with those guys and teaching them things? Am I making sense with that question?
Yes, you are.
Okay, let's talk about it.
It's weird when they're older than me.
That's what I mean. Because I get out on the range with guys and I'm like, dude, like, where have you been your whole life? Mm-hmm. Like, what's been going on for you?
Perfect example today. Somebody had mentioned that I was able to get my point across with using little to no swear words.
Yeah, that's right. That was awesome.
And I was like, well, every once in a while, I try not to, right? I try not to. Yeah. But I was like, we had a lady in the class today. We had a female in the class. And out of respect for her, that's why I was watching my mouth. Because I was like, if my mom knew I was speaking like that in front of a lady, she'd probably beat my ass. Right? And so just kind of growing up with like those values, goes a long way. But yeah, nowadays, like, that doesn't exist. And it's kind of crazy to me because it's like, and we see it too in like just going to dinner, like employees, and it's like, you could tell the people that didn't grow up, with that discipline. So yeah, it's not really weird, but in my mind, I'm like, like you were saying, like, how did you make it to this point without, but then also, I don't know, man, it's a good question. It's kind of threw me off a little bit.
It's a little odd.
But I get what you're saying, man.
Yeah, here's my point is like people will show up, like it's kind of like playtime for them. They're discovering, this is a whole other thing. So I see a lot of things happening sort of in the world right now. And I don't want to badmouth people that, I want to be really careful about the way I articulate this. But I see men, right? And I don't know how the hell we got on this topic, but you're the right guy to talk to about this. So I see guys going to what I would refer to as like almost like man camp, right? And again, I'm not being disparaging where guys are trying to figure out who they are, right? They're trying to gain some confidence in something. Mm-hmm. They've been chasing their careers their whole life and maybe not been the men that they wanted to be at home or with their partners or even for themselves. And they're recognizing now, like, I'm not a protector. Like, I have no fucking skill whatsoever. I have no fucking presence outside of, my status at work or the wealth that I have or whatever else. And I see a lot of these guys walking into these classes, right? Now, at the same time, I watch a lot of people walking into a lot of other environments, whether that be plant medicine type things or, like getaways and retreats and things like that. And so I see like there's this dichotomy of people going into firearms classes, which like I recognize, like, I need to get my shit together here. But it's also a little bit of playtime, right? And then they come and they meet a guy like you, right? Who's like the guy that they don't want their daughter dating. I'm just going to be honest, right? Like, it's like be like this is exactly what I'm afraid of, right? Or what I didn't become or whatever else. I wonder how you connect with those people, because I see a lot of people really fucking overcompensating in this firearms business. And there's a lot of macho and there's a lot of like, you have to do it this way. And if you're not doing it this way, then you're whatever. There's name calling, there's finger pointing, there's factions, sort of being put together. And I think it keeps a lot of people, a lot of men away from learning how to protect themselves and their families, because they don't feel like they belong in that situation. And there's this resistance to getting into it because they just don't feel tough enough or they don't feel man enough to do it. And I think that's a challenge. That might sound really weird to people listening to this show right now, because they're like, I ain't fucking clue what you're talking about, dude. That is not me.
Right.
But I do talk to people like that on a regular basis outside of here. And so I wonder if you have a take on this.
I do. And this may not be a direct answer, but it's something I just actually made it. Well, it was a few months ago, made a video. I constantly get people hitting me up saying, Mark, I want to come take your class, but I'm just not ready yet. I'm like, it's not a competition. And even today, I made it very clear. I'm like, this is not the first defense competition. This is a first defense class where we learn how to do things. Put the blinders on. Doesn't matter what the person to your left or your right of you is doing. I've been that guy trying to keep up with someone next to me or whatever.
Same.
And it's like, dude, I got no value from that class. I just wasted a lot of ammo and I'm not a better shooter. I was trying to beat the guy next to me.
Same.
And, and I'm like, man, you're missing out. And so it kind of like breaks my heart, honestly, when people are like, I'm not good enough yet. Or I'm like, that's like saying you're too dirty to take a shower, bro. Right. Or like, the reference I used is like with church, like, oh, I can't go to church and this and that. I'm like, bro, the church is not a museum for good people. It's a hospital for the broken, bro. Like we're there because we know how bad we're screwed up. We don't go there because we think we're perfect. If we thought we were perfect, why even go? You know what I mean? And so it's kind of the same, I use that analogy to help people understand, like, bro, you don't know what you don't know, And I know with like martial arts and jujitsu and stuff like that, even shooting classes, the hardest thing is showing up on day one. Mm-hmm. It's the hardest thing, man. And then once you do, you're like, why didn't I do this years ago? Right. And so I try to keep an open and, inviting atmosphere. And I try to get that right out of the gate, just by getting everybody talking. And then my one question, tell me something that you are deficient in, that you have a weakness in, that you want to improve on. So now everybody has to say something. Expose
themselves. Yeah.
Exactly. And getting that right out of the gate, man, like, I do that with the SWAT teams we train, with everything. It puts everybody on the same level of nobody here is better than anyone. We're all here to learn, right? Because you just proved that because you told me something that you suck at and you want to get better. Yep. And I'm glad you did, because that's why you're here. And I'm going to do my best to help you with that, right? And so that's a way that I kind of helped overcome that. And then just making it a safe, number one, but a fun learning environment too. And open of like, man, if you have questions, ask. Like, please take notes, like you paid a lot of money to be here. Like you're going to, right, adult learning, especially something new, you're only going to retain about 25% of that. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff. So take some freaking notes, bro.
Yeah, I think you did a really good job of answering that. I just see like there's so many people in need, and I feel like they look at the market of what they have available to them as being very limited. And I see the way you handle yourself, and I got that experience. I've had some of it, but I got a lot of it today, and I'm looking at it going, look, you're not delivering any less, and you're also not trying to deliver like necessarily more than can be delivered in this particular environment that we had today. You're not delivering anything less than anybody else is. And at the same time, there's not a fucking macho attached to it.
Right.
There's a lot of confidence. There's a lot of professionalism. There's also a high level of, I would say, connection with the people that you have in there without like being foo-foo or woo-woo. And I think that a lot of instructors, I guess they're siding on this side of like, I have to put on the macho, I'm tougher, I'm bigger, I'm better, or whatever. And look, I've been guilty of that too. And it's also, I think, a bit of my persona or whatever else. So I get that. I just think it limits people. And if what we're trying to do is really, really do what we're saying we're trying to do, which is provide American citizens with this thing, which they're entitled to, right? By birth, right? But it's their right to be able to protect themselves. And we should probably be taking a look at this and just being a little bit more aware of how we're talking to people, and the perception that we're giving them walking into these, whether you're trying to sell your business or sell an instructor or sell a whatever, or sell a product for that matter. Yeah.
No, and for me, and like my business motto, man, I'm like, there's a lot of, I've taken a lot of classes and a lot of them were great. Some of them were great. A lot of them were okay. And some of them I learned what not to do, right? And you're going to experience that, and that's okay. But one thing like that I never try to do is, I'm out there and doing my own thing, dude. I could care less what any other instructor's doing. I'm not trying to, I like the way that this guy carries himself, I want to copy that. I'm like, I could care less. Like, I'm just trying to do my best to relay this information to these people. And so it just comes out that way. But, and then one big thing too is like, doing it this way and only this way. I will never say right or wrong on my range. Or I'm not going to say never, right? If you do something unsafe, you're wrong.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But as far as technique, I go, look, guys, there's multiple techniques. If we're stuck on these techniques, because these seems to be the best ones, but there's a couple different ones. One technique can limit your potential and one technique can maximize your potential. Okay. Here's why this one limits. Here's why this one maximizes. Mm-hmm. Here's why the best shooters in the world use this technique. You're not going to hurt my feelings if you don't do it this way, but give it a try. That's why you're here. Be open-minded. And if you like it, freaking rock and roll, dude. Right. But if you don't like it and you can perform just as well or better, then don't fix something that's not broken.
Right.
And so having that, kind of approach with training too is like, oh, okay. We kind of have free realm, but like, why wouldn't we want to trade? That's why we paid to be here.
Right.
So kind of getting rid of that like mentality too is huge.
I think like, I feel like I already know maybe the answer that you're going to give me for this, but where do you see like the industry right now, kind of just in its current state? I mean, there's pros and cons to all the things that we see happening out there. And it's very clear to me that you're doing your own thing, right? And not like you're alienating yourself from everybody, but you're just focused on you, doing your thing. And it's been very successful. Yeah. So why would I want to fix what's not broke, kind of thing. But at the same time, like, I know you're paying attention to what else is happening out there and you're seeing what's going on. Well, give me your take on kind of where the industry is now and what are like the biggest outstanding mistakes that you see people, I'm going to say both the consumer and those that drive the business from the top down versus the ones that drive from the bottom up. What are they making right now? And what are the things that drive you nuts?
Probably one of the biggest things is like, the United States in general, like, we'll never be invaded, bro. If we're going to destroy ourselves, it's going to be from the inside out.
Yeah, we'll do it to ourselves.
I see I feel the same way with, if you want, this industry, right? Like just today, not going to say any names, but just so much on social media. It's so toxic, bro. Like people bad mouthing and talking this and that. And I'm like, dude, what are we freaking in middle school? Like,
yep.
You know what I mean? Like we should have bigger things. So that's like the biggest thing that's so harmful, man. It's like, we should be on the same page. And if not, that's fine. That's why there's multiple instructors, out there. And that's why I seek training, figure out which one you like the best and stick with them. And then maybe take some other classes with someone else. But yeah, that's probably my number one thing that I see is just the negativity amongst each other. And I'm like, dude, we're all trying to do the same thing. Like, like why are we at each other?
To eat one another at the same time.
Yeah, and it's like I said, man, at the bottom, it's competition. At the top, it's collaboration. And there's plenty to go around, bro. Like there's so many gun owners in this state or in this country and this state, that it's like, yeah. So I don't understand it. I'm very, very careful because social media, dude, everyone knows it's such a toxic, it could be such a great thing. The amount of people that I've reached from across the world is insane, but it's also can be such a negative thing. So I'm very careful about what I post. I stay away from politics. I just don't care. Like I have my own opinion about it, but posting about it and being pissed off about it is it's not changing it. It's just affecting my value of life and my relationships, being in a bad mood all the time about it. I'm like, I'll do the things I can do in, signing waivers or, petitions rather, and, things like that. But, so yeah, I mean, I'm very selective about what I post, and I try to post things that bring value, is the biggest thing. And, but yeah, man, I mean, I don't feel I answered your question.
No, I think you're doing
to
it.
The fullest potential, but that's the biggest one, man, is just the being so toxic, man, and everyone just battling each other. I'm like, dude, we're all trying to do the same thing. Like, let's get on the same page.
So next question on that, like just with kind of where we are as, as a United States, Second Amendment, we live in California,
I have a good one for that.
Yeah. What do we need to do?
Here's the thing, and this is kind of on track because he said Second Amendment. Did you know you can be pro-gun and anti-Second Amendment?
Okay.
Have you ever heard that? Okay. People are like, wait, what did you say?
Yeah. So I think what I'm hearing you say is I can be a peaceable citizen that might not necessarily follow all the laws. I can be a peaceable, responsible citizen that might not necessarily follow all the laws that are being propped up by certain states or even maybe on the back end of the Second Amendment?
To an extent. I'm kind of getting more of the gun collector. Somebody that's like, I got 15 AR-15s, bro. I'm like, cool. They're all like budget builds and half of them don't work. You don't even know how to load them. So nothing wrong with that. You're a gun owner, bro.
Okay.
Right? Gun collector. But if you are a true Second Amendment supporter and understand what the Second Amendment is for, tyranny, right? You should be training accordingly. And if you're not training accordingly and preparing yourself to, uphold the Second Amendment and fight for it, you are anti-Second Amendment. You can be pro-gun. You can own all the guns in the world. But if you're not training for that purpose, like you're a gun collector, bro, in my mind. Right? I know so many people.
We are not the same.
Correct.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah. I know so many people that own guns and they don't know how to load them, nothing. And I'm like, dude, you don't have to sell anything, but to fund it, if you have freaking 10 ARs and 10 handguns, sell 9 of each.
Right.
Buy a good optic, stay off Amazon.
And get training.
Buy ammo. And more importantly, like you just said, man, get training. Right. People always ask me like, bro, you probably have so many guns. I'm like, not really. I got a couple rifles. They're all built out the same. Right, Aimpoint T2s, Unity mounts, literally all the same. My setup. I have 3-4 pistols. They're 2 set up the same. They're backups to the backup, and that's it, man. Like I invest in other things like training and learning how to use this stuff, and ammo. So it's just different mindset. There's nothing wrong with being pro gun, but just understand, like you said, we are not the same. You know. And so I don't know. I just think if you say, oh, I'm pro Second Amendment and you don't know how to shoot, like, are you really? Like, you're a poser, bro. In my opinion.
Good point.
You're a poser.
Speaking of training, who would you go train with right now? Like, is there anybody you haven't trained with that's on your bucket list?
Yes. Craig Douglas from ShivWorks.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Same.
Yeah, man. He's been on the bucket list, and other people that I've trained with a lot, and I have a very few select people that I've trained with. A lot of people I've trained with, but a few select that I would go back to.
Gotcha.
But as far as people I have not trained with, definitely Craig Douglas is one of them. And then do a couple more like NVG classes. Mm-hmm. Like Kinetic Consulting. Mm-hmm. He's a guy I've been wanting to train with. I've heard great things about him. But as far as other people, man, like just to throw out a few names, just name dropping that if you're looking for training and you want the best, Great guy, Donovan Moore from Point One Tactics, freaking solid instructor, phenomenal shooter. Rick Crawley from Achilles Heel Tactical. I'm probably going to forget some. I'm not going to do a long list.
I got you.
Jason Falla from Redback One, phenomenal guy. Man, I've taken so many. Bill Blowers, Tap Rack Tactical, freaking solid class.
Mm-hmm.
He could probably outshoot most people with only one hand on the gun while everyone else has two hands on the gun. It was a pretty humbling experience. But yeah, man, there's a select few. And like I said, I missed a bunch. There's a lot of great instructors out there. But as far as people I haven't trained with, man, yeah, that just his, hand-to-hand and his edge weapons works and stuff like that looks really cool.
Yeah, the combative stuff is a game that people are starting to pay a little bit more attention to and how important it is. I mean, we were talking about the tips, defensive handgun today. Like, hopefully you never have to use this thing. So,
right.
But what are the possibilities that are out there? What's the realm of possibility? Craig Douglas is one of those guys. There's a lot of dudes out there that are doing this stuff.
Yeah. I almost forgot one really good one. And I apologize, I forget the name, but it was a pre-attack indicator behavior analysis class. Reading body language, phenomenal.
Wow.
Yusuf Badu.
Oh, Badu.
Yeah, Badu.
Yeah, Yusuf. Yes, I know who that is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't taken classes from him yet, but I like his stuff that he puts out.
It was really good, man. Really good. A lot of the body positioning and stuff I talked about today, right? Like a lot of that is I picked up from his class. That was really cool. But yeah, the soft skills.
Right.
Everyone's like, freaking learn how to run a gun and this and that. I'm like, did you know with good situational awareness and picking up pre-attack indicators that you could just completely avoid these situations altogether? Because that's ideal. We never want to have to use the firearm, And so I feel people kind of skimp out on the soft skills. So don't cut yourself short on soft skills, man. And that was a great class. It was really cool. I recommend it.
So when we're looking at like first defense here, and what happens is you mentioned like it's going to be busy this year. You got a few events. You're very busy with your schedule, booked out 3 months in advance. I know like because I had this conversation with you before. I think it was last year. I'm like, dude, tell me what you're doing like in like March, April next year, because my calendar was booked. He's like, I will drop that schedule at the first of the quarter. Can you talk a little bit about how you do this, how you set up your year?
Yeah, absolutely. So as of right now, I post my classes quarterly, right? So every 3 months, we drop that quarter of classes, right? I try to drop the, for instance, this third quarter, I'm going to drop it, where are we at? Hopefully before the end of this month, right? So hopefully by like Monday, Tuesday, we drop it. And then that'll be 3 months worth of classes. And we typically do on average 4 classes a month of open enrollment. Sometimes it's more, usually never less. It's usually one class a weekend. And then of course we have private lessons during the week as well. So we do it that way. And because people are like, bro, I can't get into your class. Like, how do I sign up? Because
this is a problem.
It is.
Yeah, it was for me.
Yep. Yeah. And so a lot of people, I'm like, it sucks for a lot of people. But at the same
nice
time,
problem to have, man.
Right? So if you're on my email list, you can hop on that. How do you get on the email list? If you've purchased a class or anything from me, shirt, anything, I have your email. I don't send out spam, right? I only send out and I post it like a week before. Hey guys, we're dropping second or third quarter, fourth quarter, whatever it is, to kind of give you a heads up. And we post it on Instagram as well. They usually get posted to Instagram and website at the same time. What's crazy is we've never even announced anything. And while my great friend Taylor, he runs my website for me, he'll be adding the classes, like not announcing anything. People will be booking classes. Like they're sitting on the website waiting. I'm like, this is insane. Like great problem
he's
to have.
updating the website, right? And it's being booked at.
I'm like, what the hell? Yeah.
Like he's checking back, making sure it's all formatted right or whatever.
Which is a great problem to have. But again, sucks for people that are like, bro, I've been waiting months to get in. So recommendation, turn on post notifications if you do follow the Instagram account, because it'll let you know when I post. And I don't post a whole lot, which is a downfall of mine. But like today I took one video of the whole class because I'm focused on running a class, and sometimes I get guys that take content and I appreciate it, but like I have other concerns,
I have to tell you, I've interviewed other coaches on the show, like some legends, by the way, and they teach as much or more than you do. And guess what they don't do? They don't post on Instagram all fucking day long because they don't have time for that. Yeah. They're coaching classes, right? Or they're trying to have a life. So yeah,
getting paid what we're or doing what we're getting
earning
paid
what
to
you're
do.
getting paid to do.
Nothing wrong with taking pictures and stuff, but I want to, I just forget. And so anyways, so we post classes quarterly, turn on post notifications. So when I post, it'll let you know. And then the first week or we usually drop them during the weekend. So like Saturday, Sunday, if we drop it Friday, we'll run a 20% off sale for 2 days. So it'll be 20% off any of those classes during that quarter. And you can add, some people have, bought 4 or 5 classes at a time because it's 20% off all of it. That's a pretty good
savings. Yep.
Sometimes people miss the sale. They're like, dude, I just saw this. Like, I'll honor it, man. If it's like a day or two later, I'm like, yeah, dude, like here's the discount code. I'm not, especially, if it's something like that. And then if you've taken a class with me previously, you have what's called an alumni discount. And that code, even when we're not running a sale, you can apply it and it takes 20% off any class. Yeah, something I want to start doing maybe fourth quarter is if you want to take a class you've taken previously, give a little bit heavier discount, if you've already been through that class. It's not going to be free, unfortunately. I wish I could give training out for free, but this is how I make a living, right? But to give just to show appreciation of like, and if you've already been through this class, maybe you just want to come back through and pick up the crumbs you left behind, to give that option. Because we've had a lot of people repeat the same class, and every time they're like, somehow I'm learning more and more every time I take the same class.
I think it's pretty, actually, this just goes back to fundamentals. When you get to apply those things and you get to revisit the things that you were only learning for the first time and probably drinking from a fire hose, no matter what your experience is, because you're hearing it and seeing it and it's being applied different. Right. That makes perfect sense to me. And just in terms of how you put your classes together and the availability, I know it's a challenge. You put those classes up, you need to be on top of it if you want to sign up. Last couple questions. Yep. One would be like, what are you most excited about moving forward with First Defense? It's been 5-ish years, right? Like what's on the horizon that you're super pumped about?
So we just got approved through Riverside County Sheriff's Department as one of their CCW vendors. So we can now be offering initial renewals and amendments for adding guns to permits. My weekends are booked out pretty much this whole year. So we're going to be having those on the calendar. They may be during the week though, right? So they don't cut into our already scheduled training. So that's really cool. Super exciting. Took like 2 years to get on that list, man, because everybody's trying to get on that list. So super happy that happened. That's pretty big. I'll probably be hiring some outside staff to run that division for me because unfortunately, it's a very low level that you need. It's insane. Bro.
Totally get where
these people are carrying guns on the street. Like, are you sure we want to be doing this? So most people aren't going to come to First Defense to take that class and want to learn from me.
Right,
They just
need to take it to get through the process.
Mm-hmm. And if it's available, they'll book it, So anyways, we'll do that.
Great business opportunity.
Yes. Yeah. So after that, what I'm currently working on right now is opening my own training facility.
That is awesome. That is
about a year now, a little over a year. And I have like 3 realtors looking for properties for me on a daily basis. And the challenge is it's not finding the property, it's finding the right property. Found stuff very reasonable price. I'm looking for like a minimum 20 acre minimum because I want to be able to shoot out over 1,000 yards would be ideal. So minimum 20 probably won't get me that, but it could be a start. And open a training facility, man, not a shooting range, a training facility, right? A shooting range that's specifically designed for training, not target practice, right? So I already have this whole, never put it on paper, but it's a whole, right, in my mind of exactly what I want it to be.
Got to start somewhere.
Oh, man. And I can't wait. So I want to do that within the next 2 years would be ideal. But again, it's just finding the property to do it is the hard part. And they'll get properties that are like 3 hours from me. And I'm like, that's cool, but I'm not, I want it centralized, right?
Yeah, it's a little harder to do in California, man, especially when there's not a lot of, there's a lot of open stuff, but it's 3 hours away in the middle of fucking nowhere.
So there's an area by me in Southern California. It's in Lake Elsinore, and there's a ton of property there, man, a ton. And that's very close to where my range is that I'm teaching out of now. And it's roughly an hour from San Diego, hour from LA, hour from San Diego, Orange County, hour from San Bernardino, high desert. So I'm very centralized. People fly in from out of state or out of country to train with me. LAX is right there. It's about an hour and 20 minute drive. So I want to keep that centralized location because I think that's huge, man. People will train if there's value. Like we have one guy that flew in from Phoenix to take this class.
That's right.
That may or may not be sitting in this room.
Yeah.
Right. And
I'll give him a shout out. Dom came all the way from
dude.
He's staying in my house. Like I put him in, I was like, you're coming out, you're staying with me, dude.
Yeah. So Dom flew out, man. And that's, I mean,
you had guys fly out from Australia.
Yeah. This last week, man, this guy, he booked a whole week with me for private training. He flew out from Australia. I rented him my firearms, and such a great guy, man. And he was just could not believe how good of a time he had.
I'm blown away. For anybody who knows anything about Australia and their firearms laws there, like you don't have firearms there, and they're very weird. And
and the hoops you have to jump through to get them, I couldn't even repeat it to you of all the stuff he's told me. I'm like, what?
Yeah, and I think somebody was saying like when we thought we had it bad here in California, like for Australia is wild, right?
Yeah.
But guys coming literally across the world to train here, or whatever. If you had a facility like that where you could, just put people up for a few days to train all through all these different things, how cool would that be? Amazing. That's super exciting, and I think it's exciting for the community in California to know about, because depending on where you live, and particularly here, like in Northern California, we are very limited to our access. And that's why it's so important that we have guys like you come up here to give us access to different things so that we don't necessarily have to travel all the time. And so that's why I've been so appreciative, of the opportunity to get in front of you and what Kyle's and you guys have worked out, going back to the collaboration piece and being here. And I hope that you come back here and that you encourage other people to come up here and get in front of the folks here that would love to get down to your future facility or down somewhere in SoCal, where it might be, you might be accessible to them, but have challenges because they can't get that much time off. Maybe there's expense issues or whatever else. So I'd love to see more First Defense and your sort of counterparts in that area be on calendars up here. So keep doing that.
I definitely will, man. And when I asked the gentleman that came out from Australia, I'm like, how did you find out about me? He's like, Instagram.
Yeah, it's crazy, man.
And so you spoke on this really early in the beginning of this, and I've been kind of having it in the back of my mind. I think this is a good time to talk about it. Whenever people come out specifically, I mean, we've had guys fly out from Texas, Tennessee, Wyoming, all over the place to train, even just for the one-day classes. And when we do our intro, they're like, yeah, I live in Wyoming. I'm like currently? They're like, yeah. I'm like, you have family out here? Like, no, just here for the class. I'm like, dude, thank you so much, man. Like that means so much to me. But when they specifically found me from Instagram, I asked them, I need you to be brutally honest with me right now. Okay. You obviously had expectations. Okay. Otherwise you wouldn't have gotten on a plane and flown all the way over here. Were those expectations met? If they were not, I need to know why, and you need to be brutally honest with me. And up until this point, every single person's feedback was they were met and far exceeded. And so it comes back to that whole Instagram, like fluff and all this stuff, because I've bought into it, dude. I've been to a few trainers like that where it was all hype, and I got there. I'm like, this is to date probably one of the worst classes I've been to. I'm not going to say any names, right? But I'm like, dude, that's crazy. Like on Instagram, it was this whole different thing. And so I'm like, I take that so close to heart, man, because that's something I don't want to do. I don't want to be catfishing anybody. You know what I mean? And like, so I truly take the feedback, and in our debriefs today, man, I take that so personally, because if there's something that I need to do better, like I want to offer the best training that I possibly can, and the only way to do that is by asking people that just spent a whole 8 hours on the range with me or a whole weekend with me, like, bro, like, what did you feedback? Just being with me in general on the range, like I want to change something if I can. And if I'd never asked that, I'm never going to be able to make corrections. And I think what takes to be a good instructor, I like to consider myself a decent instructor, right? But to be a good instructor is to be open and be, humble enough, or have that humility to be able to ask that. Otherwise, dude, you're never going to grow.
Yeah, and then take the answer or whatever you might get. But I seriously doubt you're getting much negative feedback on anything, man. I try to be really careful when we ask, when instructors ask at the end of the day, like, it's always a little bit hard. Like, that question's coming. I'm like, man, there's a lot. I'm still processing everything that we did today. So I don't really know, but I think I already said it once, and that was the big takeaways from me were I definitely got what I wanted to get out of the time that I spent with you. Yeah. And I'm looking forward this is the last part of this actually, is that I'm really looking forward to coming back tomorrow because we have another day here to do this. But the thing that strikes me is, and I don't think it'll be any surprise to anybody who's listening to this podcast, is how seriously you take this. This is not a gig for you. This is not a, what'd you call it? What your friends say? Like, how's your little gun thing working out? Right? You know, like this is who you are. This is what you do. And you take it very seriously. There's a lot of planning and a lot of organization that goes into it. But more importantly, I think there's a lot of care and a lot of pride that goes into it in a very healthy kind of way. Not prideful, like you have to be the man of the day, but pride in that what you just said. I want to make sure that when people come here, they get what they wanted and then some. So they get like the and one, you know, on the end of that. I certainly got that. And again, like it's been a long day. It's been a long trip for you. You got to travel, you got to work all day tomorrow. And like you said this at the beginning, that you got to drive 4 hours or whatever to the next spot.
I wish, bro. I think it's closer to like 6.
To spend the night, to get up the next day, and then to do it 4 more days in a row, to then drive to work again, and then maybe get a day off. Right. And so I really value your time and the energy that you've given me today and then and us tonight. So thanks, brother. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you, man.
So as we close this thing up, like it's First Defense _USA on Instagram, correct? Mm-hmm. If they want to sign up for classes, I know there's a link tree there and they need to follow that to get the announcement on when they're going. But what's the website?
The website is firstdefense-usa.com.
Right. So anyways, I for whatever it's worth, I highly recommend checking out Mark. If you have the opportunity to go see Mark, go see Mark. Oh, by the way, you're going to be at CRW this year too, are you not? Yeah, California Range Weekend. So that's another event. If you're in California, there's a possibility. Is it the low light stuff? You teaching some low light stuff again?
I think we're going to be doing low light this year. It's not actually official.
Okay.
Right? We'll be there again this year. Yep. That's 100%. But as far as what classes we're doing.
Yeah, this hasn't been decided.
Yeah, but gotcha. we'll be dropping it soon.
All right. Well, maybe I'll get an Iron Sights exclusive or something like that at some point. But yeah, so there's definitely ways to get in front of Mark. You just have to be on the ball.
Yeah.
So thanks, Mark, for your time and allowing me to be in front of you today. I appreciate you.
Appreciate you, man. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.